if you have two people who are equally qualified and one can communicate their ideas better, that person always wins.
Hey there, and welcome to yet another episode of the World of Presentations podcast, brought to you by us at Presentation Agency 356 Labs, Boris, the founder of the company, and your host today. And today I'm joined by yet another colleague of ours who has delivered presentations in, 26 countries. But that's not everything for him. So he is also an author. He has written 3 books. And runs, I like that one by the way, as he calls it, the presentation powerhouse called Missing Link, which I believe he'll tell us a lot more about after a second. Welcome to the podcast, Richard Mulholland. Richard, welcome.
Boris, thank you so much for having me. Always great to talk to another Prezzo Pro.
Prezzo Pro, that sounds also nice. Prezzo Pro, that's the first time I'm hearing that one being used. Prezzo Pro. All right. So tell us more about you. Tell us more about Missing Link.
Well, so I'm an ex-roadie turned presentation Prezzo Pro. I used to tour with bands. I got frustrated because we didn't have work in winter. So I started selling lighting, sound, and AV to corporates for their big conferences. I then realized I got frustrated with that as well. This is a common theme, right? I always think entrepreneurs, we're not driven by things we love, we're driven by things we hate. And I would sit in the audience, all dressed up at the back of the room and have to be bored to death all day long with bad presentations. And I realized I was solving the wrong problem. You don't fix a bad presentation with good lighting. You fix it with getting the content right. So while I still had my job, I was doing some moonlighting on the side, like a side hustle. And I had this other guy who would help make presentations. And within six months, we had 5 employees, and I realized that was actually what I wanted to be doing. So I quit my job at Gearhouse and I started Missing Link full time. That was 24 years ago when I was 22. I had no idea what I was doing, Boris. No idea. I just knew that the bar was so low.
That was how many years ago?
24 years ago. So I've owned Missing Link more than half my life.
Wow. All right. That is some new information for me. Like that sounds super cool. How many of you are now working in Missing Link?
At the moment, we back down to, the whole model has changed. So I went up to full-time 30 for a while. Now we're full-time 15. That's our presentation strategists from a core point of view. And the vast majority of the team is outsourced to a contractor, depending on the work we're doing. We wanted to build a much more scalable business.
Got it. All right. Perfect. That's interesting. Like everyone in this industry has a very cool backstory of how they ended up being in the presentation space. That's so crazy.
Well, right, because nobody's going to want to do it because it's what they loved.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's me.
Nobody started out, finished school, think, I want to work in PowerPoint. Yes, doing it with the girls.
Yeah, especially just think about the designers. I don't know what's your experience with designers, but at least when we see it, when you tell a designer, hey, you are going to be building PowerPoint presentations, they're like, I haven't studied for that one. Like I was planning to be a little bit better, but.
Well, that's actually that's why I kind of got into this, is I realized this was the niche that nobody wanted to play in. This was all the designers wanted to go to advertising and marketing, and all the big companies were there. So I could either sit with all of them or be standing alone solving one problem. And that's why I went that side. But it's funny, it's one of our challenges with hiring designers is that we can't hire artists. You don't come to a presentation business to make art. You come to a presentation business to build functional design, to try and activate audiences. And the people who want to make beautiful art every day, they spend a full day on a slide that's on a screen for 5 seconds. We don't need them. This is not their home.
Yeah, that's a completely different story. We also had this discussion in our team where we were talking about, hey, art is art, and we're not in that business. We're in the commercial world where what you're building has to resonate and reflect someone's work and somebody, right? You're going on stage, we're building a presentation for somebody, and he or she needs to feel like that is the perfect reflection of them. It's just integral part of them. And so it also needs to serve a purpose. It needs to more or less help you achieve a specific goal. So this design should work towards that, like just towards that goal. And it's not just I have created this slide and everyone understands completely different things when they see it. Like that doesn't work. Everyone should understand the same thing when they see it. That's
Totally.
like a very slight difference, but it's an important difference if you think about it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So one of the very, I would say, important topics, and one of the, I believe, one of your favorite topics is when we were discussing the podcast, we ended up on, hey, why is it important for people to understand and to be presenting, to push themselves to become presenters? What's your take on that one? Because I think that you have a very strong opinion in that regard.
Right. Well, so I think public speaking is an unfair advantage. Being able to communicate well. If you have two people who are equally qualified and one can communicate their ideas better, that person always wins. Yeah. Right. And in fact, I would argue if you have two people that are not equally qualified, it doesn't even matter. Even if you're slightly less qualified, if you can communicate better, you win. Years ago, we were working with a big insurance company and we were doing kind of like an analyst roadshow to all of their people who sell their insurance and their products. And they have the top actuary in this field in the country. And they kept on putting that actuary onto the stage to discuss their new products. But the brokers would just switch off. They also had another actuary who was very good, not the best of class, but 2 or 3 rungs down, but was an incredible communicator. We had to convince them to move from the top person in the field to the person who could communicate properly, because that was the person who could get the ideas from their head, these actuarial mathematical concepts, into the minds of a broker to make them excited to sell their product. So the unfair advantage is that, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is the first act of leadership. If you go and you search for leaders online, the world's greatest leaders, there's not one single one of those photographs of people you find that you will not also be able to picture delivering a speech. To me, the difference between leadership and management is your ability to communicate, not the job title you're given. And so I believe that we have to really, really step up. And the third reason is that it amplifies your authority so much that, we talk about social media marketing and we talk about digital marketing and we talk about all kinds of different marketing. We're not spending enough time talking about stage marketing. The marketing power you can generate from a stage is unlike anything else. First of all, you have a captive audience. They're in that room, and if you're good, they're hanging on to every word because there's nothing else they can do. Online, not so captive, but way more reach. So if you can control their attention while you've got them online, that's amazing. But most importantly, the authority of a speaker. When you see somebody who's given a platform like a stage to communicate, that's almost a higher authority than a podcast, higher authority than making a television appearance. You are considered to be the expert for that 45 minutes, and there's nothing like it. I built almost our entire business on the back of going out there and speaking. And of course, you earn revenue from your talks, but most importantly, you earn it from your talks. So those are kind of 3 reasons that I think we should all be thinking about upping our Prezzo game.
Yeah, I like that you're calling it a Prezzo game. I really like that. Like, it really sounds flashy, like a little bit, like even sexy.
Prezzo. Yeah, presentation needs to be rebranded. So we go with Prezzo because it's got that kind of quicker. We've been referring to it this way for about 15 years, and all of our guys talk about doing a Prezzo and smashing a Prezzo, and yeah, that's our space.
That sounds
good. Go for it.
So how do you, by the way, I cannot agree more with what you said as an answer of this first question. Like, I will not even start discussing or giving my thoughts on it because they're so similar to yours. It's just scary. So what is the process? What do you recommend to somebody who wants to become a speaker or who wants to go and just immerse themselves in this world, who is this person that believes in what you just said and said, wait a minute, okay, here we go, let me do that. Like, what are the first steps there?
The number 1 step is to fall in hate with something. Find something that frustrates you enough to want to change it. One of the myths that people make about personal branding is that they think they want to go out and brand themselves. But actually, it's far easier to brand the dragon that you can slay, right? You want to link yourself and your identity to a problem. And if you want to have a talk, if you want to own an area of authority, usually it's easier to find a problem that other people share and then be the person that provides them with the weapon to defeat it. And so the first thing you need to figure out is, what problem do I want to solve in the world? Now, be careful where you begin. If you start too high up the funnel, if you just want to start digital marketing, well, then you're a stone's throw speaker. I can throw a stone and hit somebody who's doing what you're doing. If you want to be a motivational speaker, I will, even if, geez, if you're, and again, you might have one leg and have been born in, in the middle of a war zone, and you're still competing with thousands of other speakers. So you want to work down till you find the intersection of several problems. So it might be motivational story with framework for resilience with, biohacking. And when you can find the sweet spot between those three things, that is the problem you're going to war with. That's your first step, is to figure out, what corner of the world do I want to own? Boris, I'm curious. I mean, if you're chatting to a speaker, where do you start with them? Similar kind of thinking?
For sure. Like finding that niche of the niches, like it sounds
Absolutely.
like you're saying, hey, find a niche and then find the niche in that niche. So
Yeah.
start like very, very specific. That would be one of the first things for sure that I would also recommend somebody do in that space, because as you said, the market is just so, like, there are so many people in that space for one reason or the other, right? For one reason or the other, that it's very hard to, how can I say, to differentiate maybe, So
Right.
that is for sure one of the things that I would highly, highly encourage people to spend the time thinking on, like just spend the time, do their homework if you wish. All right. What else?
Okay, so once you figure out who that is, you've got to decide who you would like your audience to be. Now, there's a difference here. There's a big difference between knowing your audience. Spoiler alert, you can't. Every time I hear something, if you go, I was in a clubhouse room the other day, and everyone, the most important thing you have to do is know your audience. How? Everybody says it. Every speaking coach says, you know your audience. I want to see this magic skill that lets me understand 1,000 people in front of me. You may be able to know the context of your audience. For example, they might be insurance brokers who are trying to sell a new insurance product, and you can understand their objective. But the biggest mistake speakers make is, I've seen it all the time. Hey, I'm doing a talk tomorrow to a group of bankers. Usually I have my tattoos out and I wear, a plaid shirt, but, because they're bankers, I'm going to put on a suit. You're going to be a crappy banker. You want to get the audience, once you know who you want to talk to, and I think I'm jumping from one to another, but I'm going to bring it back. Once you know who you want to speak to, you've then not got to work out, how do I communicate at their level, but how would I get an audience like this to come to my level, to where I live? Because the only thing you know about your audience, the only two things you know about any audience is that, one, you are the best version of yourself in every single audience, in every single room in the world. And two, every audience has a phenomenal bullshit detector, right? They can pick up authenticity so well. And if you're trying to be, if I get onto stage and I try to be like a banker, hello, ladies and gentlemen, good day to you. My name is Richard Mulholland, and today I'm here to talk to you. They look at me and they're like, what is this guy? But as soon as I'm myself and animated, I can get away with murder, because they can see that I'm just being myself, and that's endearing. So, but you have to figure out who in the world, there's two things. Who has the problem you want to solve? That's your desired audience, but your desired customer is, who would be willing to pay you to speak to them? And then you got to figure that out. So you got to figure out who your market is, who your customer is, and who your audience is. And spoiler alert, they are not the same thing. The person who you're speaking to in the audience, somebody else is paying you to solve a problem for them. Unless, of course, you're willing to speak for free and make money later.
All right. So one of the next questions for sure should be, if somebody, let's say, if somebody says, okay, that all of that makes sense, I'll need to go that route, I'll do all of that. Once, like when we were discussing the podcast, we said to ourselves that we need to for sure mention why is it that now is the perfect or very close, if you wish, to the perfect moment? Like, why would a person go ahead and just start their public speaking career today?
Boris, it's like we one mind, bro. The first question we ask people on our Story to Stage program, when I go to the questions, the number one question I ask you is, why is this a now conversation? Right? Why would now be the time? Let me give you the general answer. The general answer is this. We are in the middle of a land grab. As we sit here right now, the acceleration of your access to audience has never been faster. So again, you mentioned I've spoken in 26 countries. That was in 2019 alone. I spoke in 26 countries on 6 continents. I was at home 7 days a week in a row, only twice in the whole year. Last year, I spoke to audiences in way more countries, but I didn't leave my living room. And that was amazing. I was able to speak at events, with 7,000 people down to events with 20 people. And it was all super easy and all the preparation was the same. So my access to audience has never been greater. I've dropped my speaking fee down between 20 and 40%, depending on who I'm speaking to. But actually, at first I resisted this, but now I realize of course I want to do that because I can, turn more gigs. And because I understand that every time I speak, I'm effectively being paid to market my business, I don't mind doing that. But I believe that the next generation of thought leaders are being carved out on these webinar stages right now. We're getting asked to go and speak all over. And if you're ready to go, businesses are doing more events than ever before. Yes, they might not be the big budget conferences at these top conference centers, but they're running weekly webinars for their teams. And if you're willing to drop in for a couple of $1,000s and do a quick keynote just to level up their team and make them better at one thing, they will hire you to do it because the appetite for something new is high. And also, I think it was Brene Brown who said, uncertainty can be weaponized. And we live in a time of such uncertainty that if you have an answer to it, any kind of antidote to the uncertainty, people will pay you to say it. So there's never been a better time. But more importantly, when this whole thing changes, there is going to be, so a few weeks ago, the alcohol sales in South Africa were illegal. They opened up alcohol sales 2 weeks ago, and the next day, everybody ran to the pubs, which is, of course, ridiculous. But when you cancel something, as soon as you open it again, people binge. As soon as we're allowed to do these big in-person events again, people are going to do them. They will be hybrid within a few months, but at the beginning, people are just going to go back to these big events. They're going to be looking for talent. You want your name to be on that list. Some speakers are waiting for this to happen. That is a terrible strategy. You want to be running by the time the starter pistol goes. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be leading at a sprint way ahead of the crowd so that when everybody else starts running, I'm already in the fast lane.
Yeah. And that's something that everyone should be thinking about. I mean, the way you said it, like everyone can push themselves in that direction so that they are on that list that you are mentioning, because indeed those big events are going to come back. Probably they will come back in a hybrid fashion because now we see, and as people that run an event, we see the benefit, right? Like you can see the benefit of the virtual world. Like it's obvious, you can reach out and you can just reach to people who you were never able to do. Like you were never, we were never going to be able to reach out to people from Australia and the US and many other countries that are enrolling for our conference, like out of nowhere, like we don't even know those people. Like we were not going to get them here in Sofia, Bulgaria, for example. Like that was not going to happen. But anyway, great advices up until now. Hopefully people are taking some ideas and notes on this one. Now it's clear why now. What are the first steps? Like, what do you think people should do in order to get on the list and be considered as one of the chosen speakers for, let's say, the upcoming events?
There's a couple of things. You have to let the world know that this is what you do. So you want to start using little things. And just before we go there, I want to say one thing. I know people who listen to your show, a lot of people who listen to your show are presentation professionals like us. This is time for you to get to the other side of the microphone. because the problems in first of all, there's no competition in our industry. The size of the problem compared to the amount of us that are solving it is so big that we could share work and never run out. The next thing is, if every single presentation business owner became a public speaker tomorrow, we still would have less than 1% of the people we need talking about this space. And I don't mean your standard presentation training. I'm saying speaking to leaders and getting out there and having your voice there. So I think that just because you've traditionally been the other side of the microphone, maybe you should change that. So what do you want to do? Well, first you got to let the world know you're a speaker. Small little things to do that are very, very simple is you'll say things, you would change your LinkedIn bio and your Twitter bio, and it would include in there keynote speaker, public speaker. The next thing I find it easy to do is to drop in references. I'm writing a blog post. I might say, in a recent keynote I gave, I spoke about this. If I'm on the radio or I'm getting interviewed about something, I'll say, it's quite funny you mentioned that. In a talk that I gave in a company in the US yesterday, they asked me that very question. And then I did this. So I'm constantly letting people know in a subtle way, not like, hey, and when you're finished, you can book me to speak. Yeah. I'm letting people know that is always an option. And so, I try and make it feel like natural language. So people just think of me as a business owner that speaks, and that comes across very easily. You have to convince yourself and start thinking like that. You've got to act like, how would I act if that was the case? And bear into mind, at the beginning, you might say, oh, but I'm not doing all these big corporate talks. That's okay. You, Boris, today decide to go to the team at 365 Labs and say, I want to do a bit of a presentation to you and level you guys up about a book I recently read. One of our businesses, Talk Drawer, you go there and we've turned all the latest business books into small little presentations that you can deliver to your teams. It's 100% free. And there's a tutorial video teaching you how to do it in 10 minutes. So you can do a talk to your team on Seth Godin's Purple Cow tomorrow. And then you can say, you know, it's so funny. In a talk I was giving yesterday, we were discussing Seth Godin's Purple Cow. So you can be a speaker the day after you start speaking. And now you jump onto a Zoom call and you invite people from 3 countries. And now you're a global speaker, global keynote speaker. It's amazing. What a time to be alive. International. So start thinking and acting as if you were a speaker. And the next thing about this is have a talk ready to go. The reason public speaking is hard is because you let the conference organizer write your material for you. They'll phone you up. Hey, Boris, we'd like you to come speak at an event next week. It's the talk we'd like you to do is, what 3 practices around body language. And you're like, okay, I'll do it. And then you think, I don't have material on body language. I don't know. What am I going to say? And then you have to write a talk. I turn around to our client and say, cool, let me jump on a call and work out which of my keynotes is going to best suit your objective. I don't want to rewrite the material. You need to have one trademark talk. You've got to have one trademark talk that is ready to go. Once you have that, then I want you to eventually have 3. But for now, just have one. And that is about the dragon you want to slay.
All right. I mean, this is probably going to be from our 50, I believe, episodes. This is probably the one with the most practical advices so far. We're 30 minutes in, even less than 30 minutes. That is this is going extremely well. So this is going extremely well. Super, super practical. I cannot agree, by the way, on what you said about just including that in the blog post that you write. Hey, when you speak at an event or at a webinar, write a short blog post about it. It's not to just be spammy or whatever. Just put it there. Let people know that you have spoken in this event. Right. Let them know that you delivered a session here and there. That gives them context that potentially when they're searching for somebody, you have already done it, which means that you are a safe choice, right? And especially if that presentation was rated as a great session, top rated session or whatever, now that becomes even better. As you said, speaker, global speaker, international speaker, and then top rated international speaker, exactly. Right? So that's how it goes.
You hit on a very interesting point there, and that is safe. You're right. There are so many people out there. The person hiring you they're putting their reputation at risk. That you do a good job in front of 500 people, they've got to be convinced that this is good. And that's where social proof, like good testimonials, good logos on your speaker one sheet, on your speaker website and things like this, those kind of things are what gives people the hope. Like I think I'm trying to remember the first quote. If you go to my website, is Richard Mulholland is the speaking equivalent of a hand grenade or something like this. It's by a 3-time TED speaker. Then there's a whole bunch of logos. Yeah, Richard Mulholland is more than a breath of fresh air. He's a hurricane. It tells you I've had more than 20 million views on my videos. I've spoken in over 30 countries. It gives you all that social proof. The guy's like, okay, that's okay. Then the logos of the companies I've worked with. You're absolutely right, Boris. People have got to feel safe, and it's your job to make them feel that.
Yeah. And also don't forget that when somebody reaches out to you and asks you to deliver a presentation, you also need to act nice, right? So you need to be, that fascinates me, by the way, that people don't understand that when somebody who runs an event, a conference, etc., they don't somehow push themselves to act nice and help this person, make their life easier, which is so strange. Like everyone loves to work with people who are easy to work with.
Totally.
Surprise. Like that, why is that not a common sense? I mean, it's shocking. Like, anyway, what are the top issues that you see with people that are approaching this world? What do they get wrong? They decided to go in, they're doing their first steps, they figured out that one session that will be their session, they know the audience, actually they can guess the audience, as you said, etc., right? But they have all of that covered. What are the first things that they more or less are not prepared for, or they plain and simple just get wrong?
For me, okay, so there's a few things. The first is that they think it's about them.
All right.
You're not the hero. The champion is in the chair. The sage is on the stage, right? We have a methodology about storytelling, but in our action framework, there are 4 steps to a talk. Give them a reason to care, give them a reason to believe, tell them what they need to know, tell them what they need to do. The basic way that we explain this to people is that you've got to understand the parts of your presentation. You've got a dragon, you've got a hero, you've got a weapon, and you've got an action. And you are not the hero. The hero is your audience. So people will come to us and say, I just want to tell people my story. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your story. They only care if your story can help them write a better version of their own. Your job is not to be the hero here. Your job is to audition for a better part in their story. They are the star. So you want to get to a point where somebody's sitting there and they're in the book of their life and they said, you know what? It was the craziest thing. I was in Sofia. I was doing a trip. I went to this conference. This guy called Boris gets onto the stage. And he said this thing to me that flicked a switch in my brain and made me think differently about presentations in a way that I have never thought about since. I went out and I did this. I landed the job I wanted and everything changed. Then you've won. Because it's me as the audience member who we're trying to talk to. I specifically find this problematic when I speak to people who want to be more motivational speakers. I just want to tell my story. The problem with motivation is it's like a sugar rush. You consume the sugar and then it wears off. You have to do something more. And the only way you'll get that right is if you figure out, well, I'm trying to give these people a weapon and excitement isn't one. So what I have to do is to actually work out what were the algorithms of success that helped my story be important to me, helped me overcome this thing? And what are the 3 things I can share with them that are practical that they can apply to their struggles tomorrow? And then you got to explain to them, say, guys, I know that we're all struggling with this. I've been struggling with this. I'm doing this and such. But at the end of today's talk, I'm going to share with you just 3 things. But I promise you, if you do those 3 things, I will help you do this. Let me explain to you. Let me give you a bit of background and then go into it. I don't know how you feel about that, but that would be my first big mistake I think people make.
Yeah. I have seen this, by the way. It's very interesting that you said the motivational people. I have seen it in the corporate world a lot, especially at events, and especially when we talk about some of those big brands, like okay, let me not name brands or names, but I, like a few years ago, I will never forget that. Like I will never forget that. I was at a very premium event, costed a lot of money. I went with a lot of expectations. Let me now go and learn from those people. It will be great. I will get some insights, etc. And then this person from a very well-known company, everyone has their products for sure, or at least had them at some point in their past, goes on stage, and every single thing he says is I, me, me, me. And I was like, this guy got that wrong. Like, why would I care about him? Like, we opened this innovation center in Bangalore. So, like, like, congratulations. Like, what do you expect us as the audience to do here? Like, me, I was like, wow, that is one of the worst presentations I have ever seen in my life. And at the same time, this person was something like innovation director, like big boss, like big role, leader, whatever. I was like, this is so wrong for so many reasons. And obviously, it's very interesting how he got to this place. But anyway, any other mistake that you're seeing with people that are approaching this space, or maybe something related to the way they're presenting, or to the way they build the story, or to the way they approach their slides, if they decide to have slides at all? What do you see there?
So I just want to echo one thing you said there as well about the corporate space. You're absolutely right. It's not just in public speakers and motivational speakers. And that story about the innovation center getting built, we're not saying that doesn't have to be included. We're saying that you have to explain to me why you're telling me. So if you turn around and say, guys, there's a very interesting thing, a reason that we all struggle to innovate. And the reason we struggle to innovate is because of such and such and such. I want to share with you a story today about how we built this innovation center in wherever. And at the end of that, I'm going to share with you the 3 principles we had to use that I hope you can apply today. Then now you've bought my attention. You filled my gas tank, my give a shit tank, right? Because every audience has one. In the beginning, it's empty. So that's the number one problem that speakers don't do, is they do not buy the audience's attention before they start selling. There's a number of different ways we can explain this, all different mixed metaphors. If it was storytelling, I talk about the dragon, the hero, and the weapon. If I'm speaking to somebody in sales, they all talk about the features and benefits of the ambulance. I tell them, forget the ambulance, sell the accident. Job number 1 of every single talk that you give, of every presentation, is to fill your audience's gas tank. That gas tank is their give a shit tank. When they care, they will listen. And your job is to get off the stage before that tank runs empty. So you've got to think of something that you can tell them that makes them sit back. And ideally, you want to have one of these moments when somebody says, actually, you're right. I have never thought about that before. Okay, that's a new frame. So I usually go to war with the topic. My talks on presentations, I go out and I say, you've been lied to. Okay, first lie, death by PowerPoint. PowerPoint has never delivered a bad presentation in its life. Blaming PowerPoint for a bad presentation is like blaming a pan for a bad meal. PowerPoint is great. You are not great. Fix that. The next thing I talk about is this thing about body language, or the Moravian myth that, 90% is your body language. What a load of rubbish. So I go to war with all these tropes that they've heard. Know your audience. And then I say to them, guys, you've been sold up a river. By the end of this presentation, I'll give you just 3 or 4 things that you can take away that will be functional and practical. The next thing that I want to address is, or just an important principle. People often say to me, we'll go to them and we'll say, would you like some training, or what work would you want? They say, no, I'm a great speaker. I didn't ask that. You can be the world's best speaker and still not be an effective presenter, because you write a good talk before you design it, before you deliver it. Do you understand a good action framework for success? Don't go into a talk just being reliant on your charisma. In fact, if you're a very charismatic speaker, there's actually some disadvantages. Think about the talk. There's a TED talk I want you to watch. It's by a guy called Sean Aker, and he speaks about happiness, ACHER. We actually recently did a breakdown of it on our public speaking program, and everybody loved him. Everybody really, really loved his delivery. Nobody could remember what he said, because his comedy was so good that it stole the attention from his message. He forgot to factor in the amount of time for laughter that he had to rush his big ending. So instead of being a peroration, a big build to the end, he lost it. So you've got to structure and write your story well. And most people don't do that. They start with the we, me, I, and that's a problem. So just really think you have to be very mindful about what your objective is and what you want to achieve there, and write your story before you deliver it. Not the whole script, but the structure.
Yeah, I would echo that one. I am so tired of people who say somehow in one way or the other that they're master presenters. You know, they don't have anything else to learn about that subject. I was like, how are you willing to even, like, how do you dare of even thinking like this? You know, like, how is this even possible to think that you mastered something like that skill? Like that, I am coming from the IT world, and back then I worked with a product that was called SQL Server, which is the Microsoft enterprise grade product. And there is no way, no matter how many hours per day you spend, to know the whole product in and out. Like there is just plain and simple, there is no way for you to achieve that. And yet there was this one person once when we were in Seattle who, for one reason or the other, just said, hey, I know this whole product. I know it so well. And he was more or less laughed out of the room. Like the other part of us as people who are in that space more or less made him leave the room, because what he said was just so lame, you know? And when people, as you said, mention that they're great presenters or great speakers, that doesn't mean anything. Like,
yeah.
Like, so what? We, by the way, had Scott from the CEO of Fox Productions. So because his company is involved with those high stakes tech keynotes, what amazed me, but actually it didn't amaze me that much, but what he told me during the podcast was very, very interesting. When they were working, and hopefully more people will hear this together with everything that you're saying, the best people, the best speakers, the top executives that we see on those YouTube channels or on their websites when they're presenting those product keynotes, the first thing they do after they leave the stage, they go down somewhere behind the stage or whatever. There are a lot of people that tell them, hey, you did great. You did great. And the first thing those people said, they are saying is, I don't care. Tell me how I can do it better. And that is, my friends, the differentiator between many people and the top executives and people in the world. They are like, I don't care that it was great. How can it be better? Right?
The only change to that I would make, give yourself that day to enjoy it. Don't getting off a stage, having an audience cheer for you will fill your own personal tank for so long. If somebody comes up to you, well done, that's amazing, I bask in it for, just at the moment, I enjoy it. I say, thank you. I don't like try and kill the mood. I really enjoy every second of it. But afterwards, our mail goes to our clients, and it literally, the word in my testimonial is, Richard is always trying to improve. He wants to be better at his craft. Any constructive feedback and criticism you can give him of how he could have better fulfilled the objectives of this keynote would be greatly appreciated. And people will tell you, I thought your humor was a bit off. I think that maybe when you did this, it didn't work so well. I would have preferred you wore a jacket. It doesn't matter. And sometimes I look at things and I think, okay, actually they want a different speaker. And sometimes I think that's absolutely great. I want to be better. It amazes me that people think they're experts. It's quite funny because I just opened my podcast app. I'm busy listening to one of your episodes with Peter Hopwood. I'm constantly, my podcasts I listen to are on presentations and public speaking because I want to be better at my craft. You need to adopt this beginner's mind. You absolutely need to. I wholeheartedly believe it. I also just think it's funny. It's that arrogance. Those are not incidentally the people that we generally deal with. Yeah, we want people who want to be better. And in fact, the reason people come to companies like yours and ours is they realize that there is a gap in where they are and where they need to be. And they come to people like us to help them fill that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the you have just dropped so much super practical advices. I think that's like we can end here very, very easily. As you can, like, I can end this podcast here without even the outro, and it will still be, I believe, extremely useful. However, before we do anything crazy like that, you look at a lot of people, you work with a lot of people, you know the industry super well. Tell us, who should we invite next? Is there somebody that is on top of your head that made a great impression on you, that you are like, this person or this lady did this presentation, or they somehow did something great in the context of presentations? Is there somebody? One name only.
Have you spoken to Connor Neal?
Not yet, by the way.
So Connor's a good friend of mine. I'll do an introduction. Where I like Connor is his basis is in Aristotle's rhetoric. So he goes deep in the principles of logos, pathos, and ethos, which does mirror quite nicely against our action framework. We got to add in argos, which is the action, because I think if action followed knowledge, we'd all have six packs. It's not about how well we do things; it's about how well we act. I think Connor Neal would be an amazing guest. He brings a different way of thinking to it, and I love his thinking. And I want to ask you one thing to ask him about, if you have him. So I want you to make a note. I want you to ask him about the story about the lecturer with the pots, the pottery lecturer at the university and the 2 exams. And we can tee this up as a future thing. And he will tell you a story about that, which I think is so, when he explained it, I thought it was such a great idea on mastery and on getting better at something. It was so good, I ended up including it in my book on presenting, Boredom's There.
All right. I wrote that down, by the way. Not kidding. So I have another screen in front on the right hand side here. Wrote that down, by the way. So I'll ask him. I know Florian, who is also very close to him. But any introduction to Connor will be welcomed, obviously, because I am also a huge fan of his. And indeed, his way of thinking about Aristotle and his work is truly, truly fascinating. Truly fascinating. I saw him on one of those YouTube videos where he spoke at a concert in front of a chamber orchestra and the audience there. And I was like, this is going to be super interesting. Let's see how he approached it. And the way he approached that talk on a stage like this, right, was amazing. I mean, he did kudos to him for that one and for everything he's obviously doing, because his work is truly, truly cool and fascinating. Anyway, so I'll try to get to Connor in one way or the other. Now, one last, where can people find you? What is the best place? What is the best network, social media network to connect? Writing down.
If you go to getrich.af, that's a quick fast forward URL that will get you to my homepage. There's link getrich.af.
All right, that's
which is a bit of a cheeky short URL.
That's the same with the Prezos. All right.
Yeah. So what I realized is, for example, if I have to say to you, that's going to take you to richmulholland.com. But if I had to give out a URL, and I guess this is like a speaker hack to a degree, if I have to give you, go to richmulholland.com, MULHOLLAND, it's hard. If I say go to getrich.af, it just forwards to the same place. The same thing with our business. Our business is missinglink.co.msnglnk. It's funny spelling. So I just say go to ineedmissinglink.com. Just the words, and that just takes you to our website. You've got to, when you start appearing on people's podcasts, going on the radio, going on TV, you've got to give people the easiest way to find you. And so even if you just get a nice, easy forwarding URL like getrich.af, that'll work for you. And if you are interested at all in our public speaking program, if this is something you want to pursue, please check out storytostage.co.
I wrote all of those down.
Amazing, thanks.
I have them, and they will be in the show notes for sure. So everyone check them out in the blog post that's coming up and that's presenting more or less this podcast episode. Richard, we can talk about this subject for many, many hours. I think like we need to do another episode. That is guaranteed. Like we in our industry, we get truly passionate and emotional for what we do. That's, I think, one of the coolest things in our industries. Everyone is so involved, right? And everyone is so caring that it's always so nice to talk with such people that really truly care about what they do and how they do it, and they're really always all in to help the other people around them, even though sometimes it may hurt. Like,
Absolutely.
It's not always cool to say to somebody, hey, you really need to work on this. Like, that's not even close to what it needs to be. Yesterday, I, by the way, gave truly like a feedback like this to somebody. I was like, you really need to spend some time on this. Like, it's not even close to what you need, because this guy was so ambitious, and I just decided to be like so honest with him, and he accepted it super well. Like, he was like,
Amazing.
I understand. I truly, and he can feel it. He knows that something is wrong. We need to record another episode. That's true.
The next one we can do is on storytelling frameworks, and why I think the biggest mistake I think people make with telling stories in presentations. So that's one we can hang up for future.
That one for sure. And it will be a very interesting intersection with the idea of many business people who say, hey, I need some help with I just need somebody to make me to help me make those slides look sexy. I don't know how often do you hear that? And I was like, wait for it.
Lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, I mean, the slides are just part of that, but even if they're sexy, that doesn't mean a thing, right? So the fact that you haven't, like, the fact that the story may be wrong and not for that audience is something that we need to work on first. Okay. So
totally.
Yeah.
That's why when I said to you that we dropped the number of people in our company, we no longer seeing being the factory, the slide factory, as being what our business is. So we now outsource the design of the slides mostly. We have a core designer that will design how it wants to look in the first 1 or 2 slides in the deck. And then we'll go to other people around the world to create the rest of the work. Because we do not want to be synonymous with making pretty graphic design. It's hard to scale that unless you're willing to be super cheap. We want to be about, come to us because we'll be, and I know you guys are the same, come to us because you want to achieve your results better.
Yeah, that is the big thing here. That I'm also a little bit like, people associate agencies like ours and like the whole industry with people that build beautiful presentations. And I'm like, nope, that's not right. There are people that could build beautiful pictures in your presentations, but it's not about that, right? Right? There is so much into it. There is the storytelling part. Oh, by the way, there is this delivery that we need to work on. And yes, there are slides from time to time that need to also look like really well, because people are spoiled. People know how good slides look like. And now every single time when they don't see them, it's like, I know that it could be better. I have seen it. I know it exists. So yeah.
TED raised the game, I guess, for everybody, right? Everyone's now seen, and even though the objectives of a TED Talk is different to most presentations, people have now seen Steve Jobs deliver a keynote, and they've seen a TED Talk. So now they expect slides to be different, which is good news.
Yes. Slowly but steadily, our industry improves, right? Slowly but steadily.
And prezos become sexier.
I will use that. I will put the word, I will write that down. I will use the word prezos for the creatives.
Yep.
That is like note taken. Like, for sure, I will make sure, I'll do whatever I can to push our design team to do and somehow utilize the word prezos for the marketing of that episode. I promise. That was super nice. Richard, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for joining in this podcast. This was great thing. I mean, there were so many practical advices. If only people just take what you advised in the first 40 minutes, and just execute on that for the next whatever months or years. As you said, the competition is so low, and it's such an unfair advantage, as you said. They will live in a world and their careers will go in a completely different dimension, I think. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you, Boris. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So for everyone, I will make sure that every link Richard mentioned will be again in the show notes. In the meantime, also check 356labs.com and not 365labs.com. Richard, a lot of people say, hey, what are you guys doing?
Oh, sorry, 356.
Not Yeah, by the way, the last time they called it 359, and I was like, Jesus, come on, like really? Now it's 359. Anyway, check 356labs.com to see what we are doing. Our yearly conference, Present to Succeed. Richard, we need to have you, by the way. We'll talk about that after, in the emails that are coming up after this podcast. Present to Succeed, that's happening yearly. And yeah, thanks for listening. And in case you found the episode useful, subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend, give us a review. You know what to do. Thanks again, and see you in the next one.